The Board of Trustees of the McAllen Independent School District will be held Tuesday, August 29th, 2023, beginning at 4 p.m. at the Dr. Ricardo Chapa Boardroom of the Administration Building of the McAllen Independent School District, located at 2000 North 23rd Street, McAllen. At this meeting, there may be discussion by the board on the items and subjects listed as follows. Item 1, we will call the meeting to order. I have done so at 4:01 p.m. Item 2, public comments. There are no public comments at this time. Item 3, discussion of directives. Dr. De Hoyos.
The directives were previously provided to administration for further action. Tonight, we will discuss those directives, including the administration's response.
Just 1 second for housekeeping purposes. Trustee Kittleman is trying to log in. Do we have a login? No, we do not, do we?
We can send her a
We'll send her one. Let me, okay,
Send
we
her
will send. No, just for about 30 minutes until she starts her class. Okay, my apologies. Dr. De Hoyos.
No problem. So directive number 1, the board directs the superintendent to develop a communications plan to promote effective governance for board approval designed to ensure the timely delivery of pertinent information to each trustee. Administration will continue with current communication practices and will add the following new practices. The superintendent will attend as many board committee briefings as possible. The superintendent will establish a call window of availability every Tuesday from 10 to 11, in which trustees may reach out to communicate with superintendent. This is in addition to current practice of accepting trustees' calls at any time, day or night, and immediately returning missed calls. Emergency messages will also be sent to the board members using the WhatsApp. In this way, all 7 trustees will receive the message simultaneously. Non-emergency messages will be sent via WhatsApp as well. The district will continue using ThrillShare software as well for emergency notifications. And last, the video podcast, formerly known as Super Talk, will continue with a new name and new format. Any questions on directive number 1?
I think it's a very good start. I really think it's a really good start. And I think as we continue to move on, we may think of other things, but I especially like the new addition parts, by the way. Thank you for doing that, Dr. De Hoyos.
Thank you.
Have you thought of a new name for Super Talk?
It's going to be a surprise. No, the team is drafting some titles right now.
Okay, let's move to Directive 2.
Directive 2, the board directs the superintendent to implement the established progressive discipline board policy designed to promote employee development based on rehabilitation, honesty, ethical behavior, and mutual respect. DCD local. And our response is that the administration will continue with the current progressive discipline policy and practice for at-will employees and the current evaluation process for contractual employees. Staff will continue to be trained at the beginning of every semester. Any questions for directive number 2?
Madam President, once again, Dr. De Hoyos, I like the way it's been formatted, and I like the fact that the board policy is being put fully in effect. This was approved back in 2018, and there's been concerns whether it has or hasn't. And so this language is very good. I especially like the fact that I saw in your schedule for the district of training classes, you did include, especially for leadership, that segment of going over the progressive discipline. So I really commend the administration for moving forward in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do want to make a comment. I think that this is an excellent policy that is now in place. This was something that was non-existent when I first served on the board, and I was really excited to hear that it had started. Whether or not there were issues in the past, I think going forward, there are definitely checks and balances for all of our employees to be able to report without fear of retaliation or concern. But I am really excited that this has been brought forward. I'm hoping that the reason why it was brought forward is past and gone beyond us now. So I'm looking forward to a fresh start, and that our employees and staff are comfortable and confident that they could reach out to you or their manager or anybody in this district and feel safe and secure in their position.
Yes, definitely.
Just as a background, we did get a lot of pushback. This was originating by the various teacher groups representing the staff. And after several years of conversations, this language came to be. And Mr. Miller and myself and others that were on the committee advocated for this and pushed. And we got a lot of pushback from TASB. They didn't suggest that we do this and put it in policy. This whole premise is based on, and by the way, in the end of the day, we did approve it in policy. It is in policy. And we're the only school district in the state of Texas that has it in policy. And to Trustee Delgado Lopez's point, it wasn't necessarily that there were issues and problems at the time. It was having a vision moving forward is to ensure the at-will employees, because again, this is at-will employees. There's regulation and board policy specific to the professionals, and that's addressed in board policy in other areas as well. But there really wasn't much or anything, frankly nothing, when it came to our at-will employees, which makes up more than half. And so this affords this assures that employees that are treated with mutual respect and understanding, that when there are differences or there's miscommunication, sometimes at the very least, or more complex rehabilitation of job performance, that be timely communicated, hoping that employee will move in a direction with guidance and mentoring and coaching by their management and others, or training that may be needed to excel and become an employee that will be valued and a valuable part of the district. And if there are issues that do arise, especially if it has implications about the efficiency of the district, then those could be addressed and again, hopefully rehabilitated. But if not, then there is a sound basis for informing the employee that we may be at a point that we may have to part ways, and there's a choice. You can make the decision, or we'll have to make it for you. But again, several steps have been made, several efforts have. That aside from obviously if you commit a crime, it's different. If you harm a child or something, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about performance, work, and understanding your role in this valuable organization. And so that was the whole premise of establishing the progressive discipline.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Directive 3.
Directive 3, the board directs the superintendent to research to prepare a viable board recommendation to establish a fraternization board policy to include sharing subsequent regulations with the trustees. Our recommendation is to adopt the TASB recommendations, and they're in your packet. Any questions on that?
It was needed. Thank you for the proposal and for the work on that. Unfortunately, we didn't have one in place, but moving forward we will. And I think this also hopefully helps staff and everybody feel a little bit more at ease with the atmosphere, the culture, and, the faith in the district. So thank you very much for that, Dr. Lewis.
Thank you.
Well,
Team.
Team.
I'm comfortable with that, but there was a lot of work and a lot of effort made by my colleagues on this board, and put a lot of time and effort, and fully understood and appreciated the issues in the district regarding fraternization. And I think their language, it's also attached here, should be included as well as part of the policy. I think it's the right thing to do. This is a board directive. And these are representatives of the board, and they put a lot of time. There's 3 members plus administration. So if we put the 2 languages together, I think we're there. I think that's the right thing to do and the fair thing to do.
Okay. If I may, I was part of the committee on developing the fraternization policy, and I tend to agree with Trustee Saldivar. I think that I'm of 2 minds. Certainly we're not trying to, we're all adults, right? And we have respect for each other, and I think within our district as well. And even though on the one hand, maybe we don't need to be telling people what they shouldn't be doing, there is value in having written policies. So what I think that the committee came up with is just certainly way more in-depth than just define some of those terms, so that we're all, not only fraternization is not allowed, but what is it and why? So that we understand, the reasons that we're trying to implement this, and that it addresses the concerns that have come to light in the past and that we may anticipate in the future in any working environment. So I tend to agree that I'd like to see a combination of that.
Thank you.
I will say that I thought, I appreciate everybody's work, and I could see that everybody put a lot of time into it. I thought that it was a bit too long, and I thought that we already have policies in place. We already have DH local, DH legal, DH exhibit, the ones that y'all referenced in the fraternization policy. So I just felt like we may have had administration before that wasn't following policy. But I don't feel the need to rewrite the policy. I just feel we just need to remind administration to follow what we already have in the books. So I was comfortable with the TASB policy. I do like number 4, the violations of the policy, because I think it's important that people understand what's going to happen if they do violate the policy. But I felt like 1, 2, and 3 was already kind of replicating what we already have, DH local. But that's just my opinion. But I'm sure administration can come back with a blend of all that.
We will, for director number 3.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a training thing. Maybe it's, our policy is the TASB policy, but in our trainings, we go in depth as to what we mean by that. I defer to the administration. I think we're all on the same page as far as what needs to happen and what the spirit of it is.
Yeah. I've read those policies, and they don't cover the word fraternization. And there's a real distinction of what that means. And we have, at least that we know of, several instances present, and probably others that we don't know about, and maybe others that precede us. This addresses and resolves that and puts us in an environment that it's free from a situation in which favoritism is felt, which undermines the organization when you have a situation where folks are doing, having, relationships and et cetera, et cetera. So again, my recommendation, in fact, I'm requesting that the full item on there be put on as a board agenda item for the board to consider the policy DH local as it's written combined.
Wait, so say that again. You want DH local to be part of the fraternization policy?
Well, what's listed here that's in combined, the 4 items, because they are different. There's language here that, as was mentioned earlier, that it defines, and it also sets to the employees the fact that the school district wants to promote a safe and professional work environment for all employees. And the policy outlines expectations and standards for personal and professional relations between employees. This is a little different. And the school district expects all employees to maintain high standards. That isn't another part of the policy. It's throughout. But here it really defines it to make sure that there's no disruption of work environment that will give rise to appearance of favoritism or will create a conflict of interest. And therefore, and that all too often is the biggest undermining issue that happens in a department, is especially a supervisor with an employee in their charge or for which they have, is things begin to happen and the other, well, if you were dating the boss, then you would get, the benefit and that sort of thing. This addresses it and clarifies it, I think, much more effectively. So therefore, that's why I'm asking it to come as a whole package, as a board agenda item for us to consider up or down, and we'll go from there.
I think, I hear you, but in DH local, it has in there, like what I was saying, that what I liked about the fraternization policy with number 4, the consequences, but it's already in there. Termination from employment with the district. We already have all these things in our policies. I just want to make sure that that we rewrite things in a very inclusive way, in a wide, I don't know what I'm trying to say, legally, so that we don't write things so tightly that we, I'm trying to say, so it doesn't, yes. I mean, there has to be, we already have policies in place, DH local, DH legal, and the exhibit. I understand we need a fraternization policy, but only 3 out of 1,100 school districts have it. And I think that having one is a good thing, but this long version, I always feel like the longer things are, the more you get into the weeds, the harder it is to enforce. The basis is, if you supervise somebody, you cannot date them. That's it. And so we're saying it in a very long way, and we're going to get in the weeds if we go into adding all the local and legal and all that. But that's the basis is, if you supervise somebody, if you evaluate somebody in this school district, you have to report it. You have to report it to the supervisor, the chain of command. You go through the chain of command, and then you move into a different area. And so I just want to make sure we're not, I mean, this is all in the spirit of goodwill. People become enamored when they work together. It happens. It happens. I have many friends in the school district who are now married. And so.
I don't know where in the policy it says that when it comes to fraternization and you have a report that you will be moved or reassigned. So that's not in policy. Now, we've had issues, obviously. We have two very profound ones that have occurred that are very disconcerting. Any one would have been concerning for any school district, but to have three simultaneously that have come forward, to me, is very disconcerting. The other thing that's not addressed here, and I'm not saying it should, I think that's something for administration and probably in regulation, is that when employees are on a trip, whether it's paid for by the district or it's a sponsorship in support of the district, that somehow it should not be allowed that they cohabitate together, where you have subordinates with their supervisor, and that you have men and women, especially married, in the same space. Now, it's not being addressed here, but in all my years, 38 in a corporate America, never did I ever hear of any such a thing to have even occurred. And here's a school district which we're held to a much higher standard. In fact, the policy is very clear about children and adults and the like, but we don't have anything about adults to adults. And so this is, I think, is important in today's world. And right now there may be three, just like we're the only one on progressive. There are probably going to be more, because this is, apparently it's becoming an issue. And I remember talking to some younger folks, like my son and that peer group, and anything wrong with it. And I'm not saying there is or isn't. In the private world, that's fine. But when you're associated with a school district, that is very disconcerting. And so I, given the fact of the things that have occurred that have come to light, I think it's important to, again, it's not addressing one of the other issues. I'll leave that to Dr. De Hoyos and her administration, how you're going to address that in the employee manual or regulation. But, that to me, and I think for most people in our community, is totally unacceptable.
And maybe it's something that administration works with. I know Trustee Regalado worked very hard on this, so maybe with Trustee Regalado and legal, and we kind of redline what we have to fill in whatever gaps we think and keep it not too lengthy, but still incorporate whatever we feel is missing that we added in.
And having heard the other remarks, I do kind of see where President Eliseda, what you mean by, pigeonholing, or maybe not pigeonholing, it's not the right word, but constricting us too much, because I think we also have to recognize that while we may not agree with, actions that our employees may take in the future or things that are done, there's a morality, and then there's us policing adults. And so people are going to make decisions, and I think as long as it's not in violation of fraternization, meaning subordinates, then I think we have to cast a wider net, as you were suggesting. Because the bottom line is we can't control what adults are going to do.
Right. Yeah.
I would agree, Doctor.
I wish.
And so therefore I withdraw my request as an agenda item. I think that approach will probably be good to kind of sort it all through. I do think, though, what you, Madam President, you stated a moment ago, it's not in this language, and it's not anywhere in policy it may be in regulation, is what occurs when you do have a situation. I will tell you, there is a school district that I located, and it's much longer than this. It's about a page and a half, but it's very defined. There is a school district that has it very well explained, and it does clarify that if it's on your own time, personal relationships, as long as you don't have authority over that person, so that's fine. But during school hours, you cannot do things. It explains it like hugging and that sort of thing in a work environment. Kind of keep it very professional, do your job, and it kind of explains in detail and define. I'm not suggesting we go there. I thought this was right on point. But it doesn't have here, and there's nowhere else as to what happens, who must initiate it. And I think it should be the supervisor to say, this has occurred, to direct report or director, or to the superintendent if it happens to be one of the directs to you to say, and then you have to make a decision. So that's not there. And I do like that suggestion, that you made.
Okay, so there's a consensus, so we'll go now to number 4.
Okay. The board directs the superintendent to assist the Board of Trustees in preparing a procurement request for professional services to conduct an external comprehensive audit of the Human Resources Department to include their practices, procedures, and processes to ensure compliance and governance, and to identify the employee interactive experience. Our recommendation is that we go with the Human Resources Department or operational review by TASB, which is around $25,000, versus a comprehensive audit that is estimated at $150,000. Any questions?
I think if we can combine the two, I'm fine with that. Go ahead.
I just, we are trying to save money right now, and I think that overall, some of what we've talked about in the other directives also will impact our human resources department and how they operate and things that they do. And in the interest of saving money, one, but if you look at the proposed plan that we worked on, which I myself worked on, and have since gone back and reviewed, and also reviewed what staff has prepared for us, I have to backtrack on some of the items and think that, one, it's too long, it's too expensive. There's things that we could combine, and maybe there is a way or a happy medium where we can bring both together and kind of get that done and just maybe save us a whole bunch of money.
Yeah, I'm fine if we look at the list and see how we can combine it with what's listed there. The main area that, from my perspective, is having worked on that a long time and advocating for it, is how well have we done in implementing and are utilizing, and are we now following to the intent, the way it's written is the progressive discipline. I think that's important. But I also am concerned because, again, if you look at the directive, it's calling for ensuring that that we are enhancing the experience of the employee. And so somehow, I understand looking at the TASB one, it does talk about meeting with doing interviews. But once again here, I think it needs to have those interviews dealing with individuals that have had that experience and finding out how are we as their customer. In other words, HR is our employees' customer. The employees are their the HR customer. How are they getting that experience? I think is important. But yeah, we can combine the two. Maybe Trustee Peña can work with the administration to finalize that, and along with Trustee Rivera, I think would be kind. I was on that committee as well, but I'm cool with deferring to you two to work on it.
Yeah, no, I'm with Trustee Peña in that we were trying to limit the scope of it to keep it more cost effective for the district. And in conducting interviews, it was my understanding that we were also going to remove any interviews that had to do with the Board of Trustees, just to keep it is the school itself and the district itself, the employees of the district, and I thought that it was going to remain there, but that's also a subject. We could talk about that when we go down and fine-tune everything.
When we did meet, this is exactly, nothing changed. This is exactly, and we went line by line, so it maybe got past us.
Maybe.
But I recall you, correct, I agreed with you. We said, nah, there's really no need to talk to the trustee. So I think that one can very quickly be addressed.
I prefer not to talk to the trustees. I mean, it's not in our scope or purview to get involved in HR matters. So, and I think we leave that to our HR folks to do.
And whether or not that happened previously, I'm confident that the new leadership on this board would not support anything that happened or alleged to have happened in the past, and that our superintendent, whether it's you, Dr. De Hoyos, or whoever is in the final seat, will continue to lead our district with integrity and ensure that those checks and balances are in place. These directives were a directive for a different person sitting in that seat. And so as much as I would love to expose any wrongdoings and rectify or ensure it doesn't happen again, we can only move forward with grace and hope that that we do move forward and lead this district how it always has operated in the past.
So on that note, when I think about things or like decisions that we have to make, in my personal life as well as professionally and now here as part of this board, I always think about things as, what is the objective? Is it productive? Is it positive? Is it going to make a positive change, for what we're trying to accomplish? And so I think that, coming into today, I personally don't support doing the comprehensive audit, which I understand will carry a much higher price tag. But the reason is not only for the financial reason, because I think that's one of our primary responsibilities is to be fiscally responsible, and we all know the situation that we're in. But more importantly, that irrespective of truth to anything, and I don't have that knowledge, and it doesn't matter to me, honestly, I think what we've seen and learned from what we've seen is that there are some weaknesses in our processes, and I don't think that we need to pay $100,000, for example, if that's the price tag, for somebody to come and tell us from the outside what we already know, and that is that there's a possibility that there were policies in place that have not been followed. And so I think that we fix that not with paying a big price tag, but rather by doing the training that Dr. Loyos has already said, by having a reporting system that's available to our family here to where they feel comfortable to do the right thing all the time and make their lives easier on a day-to-day basis. So I don't support, for those reasons, I don't support the comprehensive audit. And then if you look at what the TASB audit would accomplish, it really just examines, again, in my view, what we, to a sufficient degree, what we already know, and that's that we have room for improvement, and that, the situation we have now is a new leadership, and I think we have an opportunity to, as every new year begins, to look at those processes, to retrain, and to ensure that those processes are followed. I don't think that we need to pay really any amount to do that.
Very well said. I'm of the same mindset that you are. I feel like the same thing, that it's new people in place, a new board, new administration, and it is just retraining, refocusing, retraining on the policies that we already have in place, enforcing the policies that we already have in place. And I don't want to burden staff also with, this is the beginning of the school year and there's so much going on. I don't want to burden them with putting one more thing on their plate. So I too am comfortable with not doing the 25,000 or the 150. But I think the consensus on the board is to do the 25.
Maybe not. I mean, that is a perspective that I can embrace, actually. And I know I agreed with maybe we do both or a little combination or whatever we do. But I do agree with Trustee Regalado. And if there's a way we can do this without spending almost any money or no money at all through, training might require some money. But
nowhere in this range. And so I do think that she brings up a really good and valid point, and a reporting system where people feel safe and know that their reports will be heard and they'll remain confidential, I think is also a great step in the right direction. So maybe I retract that. And if we could do it for little to no money, I'm all about that.
And I do want to add to training. Every year, we provide training on Title IX, on policies. Yet we are looking at those procedures and also increasing the group that is in there. I know that next week, for example, we're training all principals, but then the following week, we're training all assistant principals. So always looking at, okay, what other group do we need to bring in? And then also taking the lead on when a policy needs to be used or reference to, taking the time to review it and retrain at that moment. So that will continue to be the practice.
I don't know, I guess I grew up in a different world, but to me, $25,000 is like a $20 bill in my pocket. And that's in the sense of this is the cost of doing business. Right now, the administration is spending more than that to do a facility audit. So that's already taking place. Doesn't require approval because it's below $50,000 within the superintendent's purview, and it's needed. And we've done 2 facility audits in the last 7 or 8 years. So it's time to do that, especially with the fact that facilities are underutilized, or there may be a potential of having to do some changes to some facilities or make improvements, et cetera. So it makes sense. And the administration saw that and made that decision. This is coming to us as a recommendation, but the administration you routinely use TASB to do audits or reviews of your staffing, if not every year, every other year, anytime you're looking at a significant change. Is that correct?
That is correct, along with many other payroll management, job classifications, et cetera. So we use TASB quite a bit.
Does TASB charge us for that?
The pay system, yes.
Yes. Yeah. How much do they charge for that?
I'm thinking 12,000 is the last time I believe.
Yeah.
So,
And that's just one element. There are other elements that we've utilized them for other things as
Yes,
well. Is that correct?
yes, sir.
Yeah.
And
Again, I don't think we should walk away from this. I do think that's a fair amount. I think what's listed there is fair. There's obviously some issues that need to be addressed. I fully agree. At the end of the day, it's the training. But to know what to train, you have to know where the areas are that we need to train. Otherwise, you're training over here, and there's issues on these other ends that we haven't gotten to because they haven't been prioritized, have been identified. It turns out maybe doing really well here, and you're retraining, but these other areas that have not been identified, have not come to light, had not been found, we don't do that until some other problem comes up. So I think it serves us well and to the community to know that these directives just weren't a knee-jerk thing, and it was because of other people, because it wasn't. To write this directive, which, by the way, under board policy, this is a normal way of a board communicating to the superintendent is through directives, and we do that in many ways, by our actions, by our votes, by our conversations, et cetera. But in writing it, having been a process manager, I wrote it as a process, reviewing processes, and to ensure that it wasn't towards any one individual, especially the superintendent. I ran it through legal, and there was only one word that we had to change. The rest of it did not apply, because had it applied, it would never seen the light of day. This would have been something to talk to the superintendent confidentially, because it impacted him. This was a process and systems and procedure review of HR, which since its inception, unlike facilities and finance, which we do on an annual basis, we had not done an audit of the HR department. So it just seemed like a fair thing. Now, if we are concerned about costs, I get it, I understand it, but I think $25,000 is a fair amount for us to do that and get some information, so it helps you with your training.
Right, and I mean, I see both points. But we haven't had a review by TASB on this department. We've utilized TASB, and if we see TASB as a framework, right? So if it's TASB's like a framework, then it will benefit us to see their review, right? Through that framework.
I do think that we need to give this administration, Dr. De Hoyos is the leader of this district at this time, and I think she has a lot on her plate. She should assess every department, including HR. I think give her an opportunity to do a self-assessment of the district. And then, we are in a financial situation where every penny counts. $25,000 does not equal a $20 bill to me when we're in the situation that we're in. And so I think we need to give her and her new team, the team she has in place right now, and the team that exists, an opportunity to work together and identify areas where, if we're utilizing TASB every year or every other year, however the case may be, or as needed, I think that's also good. I do think that we need to always make sure that we're referring to policy, always. At every turn, make sure that whatever decision we make has a policy attached to it that covers it, that references it, that we can support it with. And I think that goes a long way too. So that's kind of where I'm at right now with that.
Just to be clear, the 20, I'm not talking about personal, I'm talking about the scope of business. When you have $1 million authority, and I had a situation like this, and I have to pay 25, I got to spend 25 because it's important to the organization. And more often than not, you found issues and actually saved you money in the long term.
And I do see that, your point, Trustee Saldivar, and so I hear you and I see the value in it, because certainly you have to diagnose to be able to treat. I'm not a doctor, but I've heard that somewhere. But at the same time, I think one issue that, when we're talking about cost, because I don't know what what that price tag was anyway.
That's an estimate of
150, okay. So what I would much rather see is, one thing that neither of these options address is the reporting aspect of it, so that our people know that they can report. And so I think that I would like the administration to look into something like that. I would much rather put money and our resources to create that positive environment for our people. And I won't name any particular companies, but there are third-party agencies that do that. And I think if we had something like that, it would address an issue that we already know exists.
I saw that, and I went on there. It's excellent. I agree with that one. Yeah. But I think they're two separate issues, and I think we can afford both, to be honest, and I think we'll be okay going forward.
We can continue to work through that and come up with a solid plan. We kind of started this process. We met as groups to work on these different directives, and now, some time has lapsed. We've had major changes since that time has lapsed, so I think we can go back and review these and then make better decisions, I think regardless of what we do, we always have to keep in mind that we're trying to get ahead financially and get to the best place that we can. So I think we continue this discussion and we'll be at a better place maybe.
On that same note, not just only looking at current HR employees, current staff, but also I think it's important that we are more transparent with the community and our stakeholders about new positions. I know there was one position last meeting, there's 2 positions on today's agenda, and I think it's important that we discuss the rationale or explain what it is, and if any positions are being collapsed in order to create another one. But we've already received the report from Region 1 showing that we were top-heavy. Positions were being created, people were being moved around, and so I think that going forward, that could be a better opportunity to communicate to our stakeholders and our taxpayers, when new positions are being created or the reasons for. I think it just helps that dialogue in our community, because there has been some concerns and some doubts about positions being created, and I think we just don't want to fall into that business as usual type of mentality, that they just see us creating new positions every meeting, so.
That's good information. So we do need to give a consensus to administration on directive number 4. So I kind of want to go through.
Well, that would be
Yeah, no, I can't do
polling.
that. So my take from this is that everybody is comfortable with the HR, the 25,000 audit. And we already have an anonymous system in place where students can they can make anonymous tips, if you will. And so administration is going to look into see if they can open it up to employees or other people as well. But we do already have a system in place and a vendor already. So administration will look into that, and that might not be any cost at all. So I believe the consensus is the TASB $25,000. Okay, so we will move on now to directive number 5.
Except, Madam President, I think we had talked about maybe the two of you working with administration to fine tune, because I do think what was just raised by Trustee Delegasa Lopez is important to see moving forward as well.
Okay.
But I think you were comfortable with that, Dr. De Hoyos. I mean, you got to have to start somewhere, and 80% of our budget is staff. So we need to understand what our staff is feeling and what issues they may have going forward. And this is a perfect first step, I think.
I just want to make sure I understand the consensus. I thought the consensus was the TASB one. But Trustee Saldívar, you're saying it's TASB, like some combination of the two?
Yes.
Okay, that was it.
Well, but only as to it applies to an area that may not be included, like the point you had raised and the point that was raised over here. One thing that's not on here that I think should be on here, which was the genesis of the actual audit, really, again, going back to process and procedures, as I think Trustee Peña mentioned, and I think Dr. De Hoyos is, and it takes a time for a culture to get back to the way it should be. There's reasons why policies exist. And when an issue occurs, don't try to go by memory. You go look it up and figure out what does it exactly say that I need to be doing, and then do that. And if you're not sure, talk to your supervisor, talk to your superior. I think I've seen consistently they're referencing a policy that has changed, or they're not referencing it at all, or it's been obsolete for years. And so I think moving in that direction, which was raised, is very, very important. So the only thing I would suggest to add, and I don't think it's going to cost much more than that, is to make sure that our policies and procedures are up to date. That's it. And we did that in 2012, by the way. It was the last time, and we found policies that were 25 years obsolete. In 2012, we did a complete audit of our policies.
And in reference to the reporting, the current system is for student, staff, and community. So I guess just letting the community know, the staff know more about that, talking about it.
It's on our website. Yeah.
It is for staff too.
I think maybe it's promoting it more or making
Right.
it more accessible to them so that they have that outlet.
And one thing I wanted to mention, like we do these climate surveys, right, where they get people to come in and do that. And I don't believe that those are necessarily always the best way because, for instance, there was one done that was referenced at another board meeting and it was said, oh, we have 100% participation. Yes, because you mandated it and you made them come to a certain building where it was done. That doesn't give me confidence as an employee to go do a climate survey where someone is in the room watching me, making sure I do it. Who knows how they sort them after and stuff like that. It doesn't give me confidence. So those, I think, we do those all the time, but I don't know that they're necessarily fully representative of, how everybody feels. So I just wanted to throw that in because that also comes into play when you're talking about how things are handled. And at HR, just, again, you were on point, Trustee Saldívar, when you said we need to make sure all of the policies are being utilized and they're up to date. And that's where I'm coming from. If you're going to issue out a disciplinary action, for instance, make sure your policies are attached to every single one of those items and that they're covered, and then we're covered. And then it should be pretty transparent.
You're absolutely right.
Okay, on to Directive 5.
The board directs the superintendent to develop a board policy, including sharing subsequent regulations with the trustees regarding the implementation of enhanced technology to regulate, monitor, and prohibit personal non-business related use of district electronic equipment and block access to personal applications and software on district computers.
Totally agree with what's written here. Excellent. In fact, I reached out to her. Normally, I don't go to director levels and all that, but I was so excited when I got that email. We all did, and it pointed out the enhancements that had put them into place recently going forward. So I was looking forward to see what policy would have to support her and support the district. And if she's fine with this, I'm fine with this. Talk about Mrs. Camilla.
Any further discussion? Okay, moving on to Directive 6.
The board directs the superintendent to schedule a board workshop and to direct the district general counsel to prepare a prospective outline to establish guidelines and procedures to help direct administration and council to determine the criteria for the district to request a Texas Attorney General opinion upon receiving an open records request under the Public Information Act. Administration will continue to abide by legal guidance.
The one thing that I don't like about, so we use the Attorney General's opinion, we use it a lot. It delays what we have to do. 99% of the time, we have to give them the information. And so it's viewed by many as a stall tactic, and it's not always a good thing. So we need to, if we need to use let's send it to the Attorney General for an opinion, let's make sure that we're doing it because it's really necessary and not. So the perception in the community is, and the perception by the media, is that we use it to stall, giving them the information that they're going to get anyway. And it makes them mad. And then they use their pen, the power of the pen, to lash back. So let's just be, I know legal always gives us good advice on those, but let's just make sure that we're using it correctly and not using it as any kind of a stall tactic or anything like that, which everybody in county, municipal, any kind of government uses it all the time. And so that's always the perception with that.
Well, on this one, and I appreciate the language, but this one is very specific as well, and it says that we direct the superintendent to schedule board workshops so we can have those conversations. And I know there's a list. I've gone to the list. We all have, and you can see where you have these opportunities for reasons not to release certain information. And there may be reasons that are kind of in the gray and you're not quite sure, so you do go to the Attorney General. But I think we need to have at least one workshop where we have a conversation with legal, and I think that can happen once we have our own counsel on staff. Not right away, probably within a few months. And let's have this conversation about these points and get clarification, because to me, it just seems we're using the Attorney General more than we did when I first started. I mean, it was a matter of course. People asked for things, and we would release it. There was no big deal. And suddenly it became, and then the thing that frustrated me, and there's got to be a reason, and maybe there is, and that's the reason for the workshop, is they seemed to wait till the last possible day and sending a letter saying, oh, we're going for an Attorney General's opinion. And then, as we found in this cases of scenarios, almost every single one of them, we were told to release it. And so that just doesn't hold for me. We're trying to be transparent. We're trying to be honest. We're trying to be forthright. I'm not saying, let me rephrase, not trying. We are being that. Then it also be reflected in how we conduct our business, whether the administration on our behalf or ourselves giving your direction, that if it's not information that is protected by federal statute or like HIPAA or thing of that nature, or confidential to the family and that sort of thing. I get all that. I mean, that's clearly in statute. That's clearly defined. But if it's a document relating to an action or something that has occurred, we should give that up.
In a timely manner.
And policy clearly states that it can be redacted. So if there's information that's contained within the document that does, then we shouldn't ask for the whole document, be held back when we could simply redact those portions. And again, that's subject to our conversation and discussion to get clarity of that, because I could be totally wrong. Thanks.
Okay, any further discussion on that one? All right,
I just really want to say one more thing. I have faith in the administration that we have sitting before us today, that we're going to be doing things differently.
Definitely very transparent, and thank you all for all the hard work. It's been a change, but we're getting through it. I'm really proud of everybody.
Thank you.
Very well done.
So on that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So, second.
It's been moved by trustee De La Garza, second by trustee Regalado. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? We are adjourned at 4:51 PM.
That was the one from another district. I copied it down and then I changed our name in it. But
Okay.
the only one I shared it with was because she asked me.